You were 14 and someone smiled at you across a hallway. Your heart did something it had never done before. It skipped, then raced, then forgot the rules entirely. You didn't even know their last name. But suddenly, they were the most important person alive. You rewrote their name in your notebook just to see how it looked. You picked outfits based on a hallway you might not even walk through. You replayed one 2-second glance for an entire weekend. You felt everything at once, and none of it made sense. And somehow, it made perfect sense. That was your first crush. And it left a mark that never fully faded. Here's what's really going on beneath all that fluttering and blushing. A first crush is your emotional system learning a brand new language. It's the first time your heart rehearses what closeness could feel like. You're not just liking a person, you're meeting a part of yourself. That's why first crushes feel so impossibly big. They introduce you to your own capacity to want, hope, and imagine. Most people carry the emotional fingerprint of that first crush for life. So if you ever wondered why one small memory still hums in you, keep listening. Because the reason is stranger and gentler than you'd expect. Let's start with what a crush actually is, warmly and honestly. A crush is a sudden emotional spotlight on one specific person. Your attention narrows, your imagination widens, and your feelings sharpen at once. You notice every small detail about them, almost involuntarily. The way they laugh, the way they say your name. Your brain becomes a quiet detective, gathering clues about someone who barely knows you exist. That's not silly, that's a very human thing to do. Because a crush is your inner world reaching outward for the first time. And a first crush is that reaching without any prior map. No old wounds guiding you yet, no breakups shaping you. Just pure, unfiltered emotional curiosity. That's why it feels so bright, and so tender, and so overwhelming. Now here's the part most people never realize. A first crush isn't only about attraction, it's about identity. When you're young, you're still figuring out who you are. Then someone catches your eye, and a piece of that puzzle clicks. You feel a version of yourself you didn't know existed. That's not the other person doing that. That's you meeting you. The crush is just the mirror that shows you what you're capable of feeling. Here's the beautiful part about that early spark. Your brain treats a first crush like a first of anything experience. Firsts get engraved deeper than repeats. A first crush lives on that same protected memory shelf. That's why the smallest details stay vivid decades later. The song that played, the color of their jacket. Your brain wasn't just recording a person, it was recording an emotional awakening. And it filed that awakening under important, do not forget. Let's talk about the physical side, because that part surprises everyone. A first crush can make your body feel like it's misbehaving. Your face gets hot, your palms get damp, your voice forgets how to work. You rehearse a sentence for hours, then say, "Hi," and walk away. None of that means something is wrong with you. Your nervous system is meeting a brand new kind of intensity. Excitement, nervousness, hope, and fear are showing up all at once. Your body isn't broken. It's just learning to hold a very big feeling. Every adult you admire once tripped over their own feet in front of someone they liked. That awkwardness is not a flaw. It's the price of feeling deeply. Now here's a quiet truth that might reframe your whole memory of it. A first crush usually isn't about who the person truly was. It's about who they represented to you in that moment. They stood for possibility, for being chosen, for being seen. You didn't fall for their full life story, you fell for a feeling they sparked in you. That feeling is real, even if the two of you never spoke again. That's why old crushes stay tender, not painful, in memory. They weren't people you lost, they were feelings you discovered. And feelings, once discovered, belong to you forever. Let's look at the psychology behind that sudden pull. When you develop a crush, your brain lights up with focused attention. You start looking for them everywhere. You listen harder when their name is mentioned. You replay 8-second conversations like they were feature films. That's not obsession. That's your emotional focus learning where to aim. Your inner world is training itself to prioritize connection, because human beings are wired for closeness from a very young age. A first crush is your heart practicing that wiring in real time. Here's something most people miss about first crushes. They often teach you what you value long before you have the words for it. Maybe you liked someone kind and didn't yet know kindness was your compass. Maybe you liked someone funny and later realized laughter is how you feel safe. Maybe you liked someone quiet and understood you're drawn to depth over noise. Your first crush was quietly writing your emotional preferences. You just didn't have the language to read them yet. The traits that pulled you in then often echo in who pulls you in now. That's not a coincidence. That's your heart being consistent with itself. If this sounds like you and a memory just floated up while you were listening, you're not alone. Whatever comes up as you keep watching, know it's welcome here. Let's talk about the ache, because first crushes almost always have one. Most first crushes don't turn into relationships. They stay one-sided, or unspoken, or interrupted by life moving on. That unfinished feeling is a very specific kind of ache. It's not heartbreak in the adult sense. It's something softer and stranger. It's the feeling of a story with no last chapter. And here's the twist. That missing chapter is actually a gift. The crush stays in a perfect, unwritten form in your mind. It never got tested by daily life, arguments, or ordinary Tuesdays. It stays glowing because it stayed unfinished. You didn't lose something real, you kept something pure. Here's another layer that surprises people. A first crush is often your first taste of emotional risk. Before that, love was safe. It came from family, friends, familiar places. But a crush is different. You're reaching toward someone who might not reach back. That's the first time your heart understands what vulnerability truly means. Whether they liked you back or not, something important happened. You risked feeling something you didn't have to feel. You chose openness in a world that often rewards guardedness. That choice, even at 14, was quietly courageous. Let's slow down here because this next part is tender. Some people had a first crush that ended kindly, a gentle smile, a shared moment. Others had a first crush that ended in embarrassment or silence. That early experience often shapes how they approach love as adults. If your first crush felt safe, you may reach for closeness more easily now. If your first crush felt painful, you may be a little more careful, a little more guarded. Neither one is wrong. Both are the echo of a very human experience. You're not stuck with whatever pattern started back then. Awareness alone begins to soften those old imprints. Just noticing, oh, that's where that feeling comes from, is a small act of healing. You don't have to fix your younger self. You just have to be kind to them. Now here's a fascinating piece of the psychology behind first crushes. They tend to happen when your brain is rapidly rewiring itself. Adolescence is a season of intense emotional learning. Your brain is more open, more sensitive, more reactive than it will be later. Feelings hit harder, music sounds deeper, moments feel bigger. That's why a first crush at that age feels so cinematic. It's not that you were dramatic, it's that your brain was literally more alive. So if you look back and think, why did that feel so huge? That's why. It genuinely was huge, in the emotional world you lived in then. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. A first crush teaches you that another person's presence can change your inner weather. Their smile can bring sunshine. Their absence can bring rain. That's a powerful lesson to learn about being human, because it shows you that connection has real emotional gravity. Once you feel that gravity, you never forget it. The first time you felt it, though, was pure, uncomplicated wonder. That wonder is something worth honoring, not outgrowing. Let's talk about idealization, because it's woven into every first crush. Your mind fills in the gaps with the best possible traits. You don't yet know their flaws, so you don't imagine any. You give them qualities you hope they have. That's not delusion. That's your emotional imagination stretching for the first time. You're rehearsing what it feels like to admire someone fully. Later in life, that ability becomes discernment. You learn to see the whole person. At the start, idealization is how your heart practices devotion. Practice is how love eventually learns to become real. Now here's a warm reframe you may need to hear. If you still remember your first crush vividly, that doesn't mean you're stuck. It doesn't mean you're not over them. It doesn't mean you missed your chance. It means your emotional memory is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's protecting a formative experience, so you can learn from it forever. Think of that memory as a photograph, not a chain. You can look at it, feel something warm, and gently set it back down. You're not carrying the past. You're carrying a piece of your own history. Here's something to remember when you think of your first crush. They didn't have to love you back for the experience to mean something. The value wasn't in the outcome, it was in the awakening. You felt hope. You felt anticipation. You felt yourself lean toward another person. That leaning is the whole point. Because that same leaning is what makes every deeper connection possible later. Your first crush wasn't a small event. It was the beginning of your love story with life. Let's zoom out and look at what first crushes give us as adults. They give us a template for tenderness, a memory of what pure hope felt like. They give us a reference point for how much we're capable of feeling. They remind us that we've always been someone who could love deeply. Even before we knew what love really was, we already had the capacity for it. You were brave enough to feel something big before you had any tools to handle it. That takes a kind of quiet courage that never gets talked about. But it deserves to be seen. Here's a beautiful thing about the way first crushes stay with us. They often become a private symbol of who we were becoming. When you remember that person, you're really remembering a younger you. The version of you who still believed in easy magic. The version who wrote hopeful sentences in the margins of notebooks. That version is still inside you. They didn't disappear when you grew up. They just learned to carry their hope more quietly. But the hope itself never left. It just matured. Here's a quiet insight worth carrying with you. The way you loved during your first crush shows you your natural love language. Some people wrote long letters they never sent. Words are their language. Some people did small acts of kindness, hoping to be noticed. Acts are their language. Some people wanted to sit close on the bus. Presence is their language. Some people just wanted to be truly seen. Recognition is their language. You are already showing the world how you loved long before anyone taught you. That authentic instinct is still in you right now. It still deserves to be honored in the relationships you build today. Let's talk about the healing side of remembering your first crush. Sometimes people avoid thinking about it because it feels a little embarrassing. They cringe at how intensely they felt or how awkwardly they behaved. But that cringe is worth softening. Because that younger you was doing something remarkable. They were feeling deeply in a world that hadn't yet taught them how. They didn't hide their heart. They let it show, even when it wobbled. That is not something to cringe at, that is something to admire. Here's the truth that ties this whole story together. A first crush is a small love story that happens before you know love. It's a rehearsal your heart didn't know it was doing. It's a signal from the future saying you're built for connection. Whatever happened with that person, the feeling you had was real. The blush was real, the hope was real, the wonder was real. And all of it belongs to you. Not to them, not to the memory, to you. So the next time a first crush memory floats up, don't push it away. Smile at it, nod at it, thank it quietly. Because that small, sparkling moment helped shape the person who is here right now. The person capable of love. The person capable of tenderness. The person capable of hope. If any part of this touched something in you, take one slow breath before you move on. Let it settle. Let it soften the way you look at your own story. If you'd like more warm, honest conversations about the psychology of love and the quiet ways our hearts learn to reach for people, you're welcome to subscribe and stay a while. A gentle like helps this reach someone else who needs to hear it too. But more than anything, be kind to the younger version of you who felt so much, so early. They were never being silly. They were being brave. They were preparing you in the sweetest way possible for every meaningful love that would follow. Your first crush wasn't the beginning of your love life. It was the beginning of your love story with yourself. And that story, thankfully, is still just getting started.